could all please give our attention and respect to Council Vice President Scott Barr, who will open our meeting with a prayer this evening.
All right, Lord, we come to you again tonight. We thank you for the breath of life. We thank you for the freedoms we enjoy. We thank you for the improving health that we see in our community and around the state and around the nation. Lord, we long for truth. We long for love. We long for justice. We long for goodness, all of which are centered in your character. And even as we're just one day past Father's Day, Lord, in which we celebrate all the fathers, we recognize you as the example of what fatherhood looks like. And just as you lead by example, we ask that you would help us to lead by example. Please give us wisdom. And just as you exemplify love and justice and goodness and forgiveness, we ask that you would help us to do the same. We pray for those who serve. We pray for our first responders. And we pray for wisdom, even for this body tonight, as we would look to make decisions. I pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Vice President Barr. Good evening and welcome to the 1,899th regular meeting of Livonia City Council. This is a voting meeting. Minutes of this meeting will be approved at the next regular meeting scheduled to be held on Monday, July 6, 2020. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Vice President Barr?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember McCullough?
Here.
Councilmember Donovic?
Here.
Councilmember Jolly?
Present.
Councilmember Toy?
Here.
President McIntyre?
Here. We have all members of council with us this evening. This time we'll have the presentation of the minutes. These are the minutes from the 1,898th regular meeting of the City Council that was held on June 8th, 2020.
Madam President, I'll offer an approving motion for those minutes.
Was that Vice President Barr? Jolly and Vice President Barr.
Yep.
We can, if there's no discussion, would the clerk please take the vote on the approval of the minutes, please?
Vice President Barr?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough?
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic?
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly?
Aye.
Councilmember Toy?
Aye.
President McIntyre?
Aye, and the minutes are approved unanimously. At this time, we go to the council. If anyone has any personal announcements, tributes, or recognition they'd like to offer. So, Member Jolly?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to take this chance to wish my son JD a happy 5th birthday. We are proud of him. He's doing well, and he is playing Minecraft right now. So thankfully he's occupying himself, but thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Council Member Jolly. Council Member McCullough.
Thank you, Madam President. Tomorrow we'll be celebrating our little Harper's 6th birthday. And I actually asked both Casey and Harper to leave the house. So Jim's in a different position than I am. So they're out playing. But no, big happy birthday to number 6 to Harps.
Happy birthday, Harper.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Council Member Toy.
Happy birthday to both your children. That's awesome. I wanted to congratulate you and particularly your son for being appointed to the Arts Commission. David, a very capable young man. It's nice to see our youth coming forward and serving, and much congratulations to David.
Thank you, Councilmember Toy. That was a very lovely surprise for him, and got the word today from Josh Sabo, and very appreciative of very much looking forward to serving. And I think, as a lot of people on council know, he has a strong background in theater and music, and he's really excited about it. So thank you very much, Councilmember Toy.
Certainly.
Anyone else? All right. We'll go ahead and I will introduce the department heads. And again, this is a little bit of a challenge when they're not in front of us, but I'll begin with our city attorney, Paul Bernier, our director of economic development and planning, and TLC and donation sites and many other things, Mr. Mark Terina. Our outstanding city engineer, Todd Zelinsik. Our Information Services Director, Casey O'Neill, who again has made so many of the things that we've been able to keep doing possible. Let's see. We have Susan Nash, our city clerk, who's getting ready for a very busy election. I see that we have Brandy Isaacson, our Director of Housing. And I'm looking to see, I believe that Judy Preby, our Legislative Director, is on. And let's see, I think we were going to have Dave Varga on as well this evening, our Director of Administrative Services. We have our Treasurer, Miss Linda Scheel, on. And please forgive me if I've overlooked any of our fantastic department heads. So with that, I move on to my announcements. We have 2 X items at the end of the agenda, and we will require a vote from council to take up those items after the meeting. And we'll discuss those items when we get to them. At this time, we go to audience communication. And I will remind the members of the audience that everyone is limited to 3 minutes. And the audience, our published rules for audience communication do not allow for any attacks on any council members or inappropriate comments. So if you start down that path, we will give you a reminder. And if you continue down that path, you will not be allowed to continue with the remarks. So I wanted to just make that clear, but you have 3 minutes. We always look forward to hearing from people to comment on any item not on this evening's agenda. And it looks like so far we have 2 people who are waiting to speak. 3 now, and we'll begin with it looks like Mr. John Hillers. And we ask you, if you want to give your name and your address if you for the record. All right, and Casey, I need some help here, I think. Maybe I can unmute. Casey, if you could help me. Okay, there we go. Yes, good evening, Mr. Hillers.
Good evening. I wanted to ask I don't know if this would be directed at the city attorney or maybe the city treasurer, but is there a process to know how much the city has paid out in settlements for lawsuits brought against the LPD or against specific officers?
Mr. Hillers, you're welcome to make any comments. This is not a forum for members of the administration to answer questions to the audience. So I guess you've raised a question, and I would encourage you to follow up with the mayor's office. As you probably know, the police department works under the direction of our police chief, Curtis Cade. He works under the mayor's direction, and all of our department heads, including the city attorney, work under the mayor. So of course, any of the council members are welcome to speak, but there's no obligation, and this is really not the appropriate forum to ask department heads to report out to you. This is an opportunity for people to give their comments. So you still have some of your 3 minutes left. Do you have any other comments you'd like to share with us this evening?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for calling in this evening. We'll go next to Ms. Hillary Smith. Good evening, Ms. Smith.
Hello. I am Hillary Smith. I live in the state sub. And once again, I am the co-founder of Livonia Citizens Caring About Black Lives. I do have a couple questions, and hopefully you'll be able to answer. Let me just grab those real quick. Previously, we've filed and asked for Freedom of Information Acts, and a lot of data is missing about why we do not have the race of people pulled over listed for the traffic violations. And this is a significant problem, and we would like to work on more police transparency and know that, that a big part of that is coming from the city council that we need to work with in conjunction with the police department. So is there a reason that things are not as transparent as they should be in Livonia?
Ms. Smith, this is an opportunity for you to make comments. Again, the mayor's office, everyone, all the department heads work under the direction of the mayor. So if you have comments or questions, then I would direct you to the mayor's office.
I have an additional question then. Previously, you've stated that you've driven every street of Livonia and have never seen any hateful signage. Have you driven down Levan?
No,
Crafted 5 Mile.
I'm sorry. I'm not, we don't answer questions during this time. We're happy to hear your comments. So you still have some time left. Do you have any additional comments you'd like to make?
I will be submitting a form for a study meeting to further discuss with you the racial biases within the city council, within the police department, within the entire city. So I look forward to meeting with all of you.
Excellent. Thank you for your time this evening. Anything further?
No, just I think you're really showing again your true colors.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Thank you for your time this evening. Next, we go on to Burns. Good evening, Burns.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, this is Rose Carpenter, and I live at 18974 Gary Lane.
Oh, Ms. Carpenter,
Yes?
if this is about the X item, that will be at the end of the meeting. This is
Okay,
communication on items that are not on the agenda.
okay, I'll call you.
I encourage you to check back in a while, or just stay on the line and listen in until we get to that item, and then we very much look forward to hearing from you.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hi. All right, next we go to Amanda C. Good evening. I'm having some trouble.
She's on mute.
All right, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Well, since we're not allowed to ask questions, I suppose that I'll rephrase some of these into statements, since the council is not allowed to speak. I would like to make sure that everybody on the council recognizes the term sundown town. I would hope that you are all educated enough to know what that is and know what it means and know the history of it in Livonia. And I would really, really hope, I'd love to ask if any of you care to make any moves to repair the racism that was written into our city at that time. I'd also like to ask if any of the council members are aware of the term white silence and the fact that staying silent on matters, no matter how uncomfortable and inconvenient it is for you, staying silent on matters of race is violent against our community and the people of color in our community, and it is contributing to the reason why we have such a sad diversity in the city. We have almost no diversity here, and that's a big part of it. So even if you do support the movement, if you're not actively speaking out against your friends, your family, your coworkers, other council members, then you're really not being that helpful. And I would also like to know why none of our council members have made any public statements on the racism that we've seen permeating from some certain council members in their last couple of social media interactions. But I'm aware that you're not allowing the rest of the council to speak, so that is it. I'll yield my time.
Well, thank you for calling in this evening. It's not that I don't allow any of the council members to speak. No council members required to respond. I don't control the council members. They are all free to speak if they wish to. No one is required to. All right, I see that I think Amanda has ended her call. We'll next move on to Miss Alexandria Hughes. Good evening.
Hello. I'm interested to know what kind of training do you guys give your officers in terms of dealing with non-white people? My brother was pulled over and guns were drawn at him before they even got to the car because of an air freshener. He was also followed home twice by police, never committed a crime in his life or anything like that. He's an African-American male. And I'm just curious whether or not, like, what do you guys do to prevent that? Because I've heard that story multiple times.
Again, Ms. Hughes, thank you for your call this evening, and I will reiterate, I don't know if you've heard what I said before. The Livonia Police Department works under the direction of our police chief, Curtis Cade. Curtis Cade works under the direction and the authority of our mayor. The operations and the policies of the police department are the jurisdiction of the police department and the mayor's office, not the city council.
Hey, please let Curtis K know that then.
Pardon me?
Please let Curtis K know that then about his police department.
The way you would communicate with the police department is through the mayor's office. So that's the way the council does not, the police chief does not report to us. So he reports to the mayor. So the way to handle that would either be through a citizen's complaint through the police department or through the mayor's office. Anything else? All right, well, thank you for calling in this evening. Next, we will move to Mr. Hillers. Mr. Hillers, you already spoke, so everybody gets one shot. So we'll go on to Ms. Craigle. Good evening, Ms. Craigle.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
I just wanted to say for the councilmen that said that they have young children who are celebrating birthdays, happy birthday to them. But I hope that you lead better examples for your children and show them that it is not okay to act the way that you are acting, that it's not okay to just not be racist, actively fight against it. Your silence is hurting people. It is actively hurting people. And I hope that you will show your children, and hopefully maybe this can be a wake-up call for you, that how you are acting and how you are
All right,
leading.
excuse me, Ms. Craigle, the city council rules do not allow any attacks on council members. So I'll ask you to keep your comments, if you have additional ones that are not personal, to continue with those. But this is not, our rules do not allow for personal attacks. So please continue without attacking any of the council members. Anything else, Ms. Craigle? I'm trying to unmute. I'm trying to unmute Ms. Craigle.
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Move on to John. Good evening, John.
Excuse me. Good evening. I would just like to comment that to date, despite numerous public inquiries and requests, Police Chief Cade has refused to release any statistics concerning the racial demographics of persons arrested within the city of Livonia, as well as the racial demographics of individuals stopped by police either on the street or during traffic stops within the city. And, I'd also like to comment that I'm confused as to what the point of this section of the meeting is really about. You're apparently now not allowed to criticize council members despite the fact that they are public employees. They're subject to the will of the voters. That's the only reason why you're in those seats today. And second, you can't be held accountable by answering questions that the citizens of Livonia are asking you. So, I'm not very familiar with the traditional rules regarding this meetings. Excuse me, regarding these meetings, but I would say that I think this rule regarding criticism of council members sounds like it was recently invented after the shellacking that a certain member got in the last meeting. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, John. The rules were not recently invented. I gave some leeway several weeks ago so people could express themselves. The council president has the discretion to do that. We are not indulging anyone in such leeway tonight, and the rules do not prohibit attacks on council members. So when people want to attack council members for their silence and criticizing their role as parents, that's a personal attack. And the reason for audience communication, people have the opportunity to speak on any issue in the city. that concerns them that's not on the agenda. So thank you. All right, with that, we move on to Sarah O.
Thank you, Council President McIntyre. Good evening. Good evening, council members. Good evening, department heads. My name's Sarah Overwater. I live on Westmore Street near 7 Mile and Farmington Roads. Like many of my fellow callers, I am just getting involved in the processes of our local government. I'm now learning all kinds of things about who's in charge where and city departments and all of those things. I very much appreciate the patience that some council members have shown in explaining things to me via email. I believe it would be extremely helpful if the city council would consider having some sessions, perhaps not meetings necessarily, but open forums where we can have dialogue all together. Taking 3 minutes to comment here in weekly city council meetings is quite nice, but what would really go a long way toward mending some of the frustration that I believe the council is feeling and my fellow Livonia citizens caring about Black lives are feeling would be some sort of dialogue where questions can be asked and answered. So I would like the council to consider something like that, not necessarily an official meeting, but even a few council people, perhaps a committee could be formed that would be willing to start a conversation and have a dialogue. We will do our very best to direct all of our questions and complaints to the proper departments, and we ask that you bear with us as we start engaging in local politics. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and we move on to Ms. Christine Douglas. Good evening, Ms. Douglas.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
You sure can.
Awesome. All right. First, I want to say thank you again. Mine is not in regards to anything that's just been talked about. So I'm kind of switching gears, and I'm sorry here a little bit. But thank you to the various council members who've responded to my emails about this. You've kept me somewhat sane through this. But okay, so I live on Ladywood Street at 5 in Newburgh, 37778 Ladywood. So our whole subdivision is under construction in some way or another. And my biggest concern is that we received a letter in the mail, gosh, maybe 2 weeks ago. And the day that we received the letter was the same day that all the trees in the neighborhood went down. Almost every old tree in the neighborhood they took down. And we were told it was because the street was kind of not going to work for, was being redone and the trees were just going to be in the way. And obviously I understand that. There were a few trees that we were a little concerned because they didn't seem to be as unstable as was previously noted. That's kind of besides the point. And I know I can't do a lot to save the trees, even though I would love to hug them and keep them all here. That being said, the day that we received the note, we were told that we couldn't have a neighborhood meeting because of COVID. And obviously we're having a meeting right now. So this meeting is happening via Zoom, and we as a neighborhood never got the opportunity to express our concerns about this project or even learn about it before it was set to start. Everything is now pushed back, and this project is going to get started late August, September, which is when the kids are supposed to go back to school, fingers crossed. So now we'll be hiking to our car, doing all this stuff when school started, when it could have been done all summer. We could have had notifications. We could have had meetings via Zoom. And I was also, I sent multiple emails. Most everyone responded. I did send some to the city of Livonia, and I know this does not concern you guys, as you guys have been great, but a lot of them did not get returned coming from there. So I was a little bit frustrated, and I just wanted to voice my concerns about that. And all in all, I just wish we could have had a meeting. We could have voiced some concerns as people in this area. And also, if there's anything can be done about the those trees that are still standing, because there are some that are still there. If we can do anything about that, I would love to keep a few more of them. And currently, we've had piles of tree debris for about 3.5 weeks that have not left. So it's a big mess over here.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas.
Thank you very much.
And first of all, let me say, I do not know if I received an email directly from you.
You did not.
I know that one of the council members had reached out to me late last week or mid last week when you reached out to one of the council members.
Yes.
Asking me how to respond, and I apologize. I was out of town and did not have an opportunity to return the information to my colleague. The questions that you bring up are very, I don't want to say legitimate. All questions that get asked are legitimate. You bring up very, very good points regarding the timing. I don't know when you receive the letters. I can tell you that I'm going to defer to our city engineer in just a minute, but I will say this, Ms. Douglas. The COVID threw everything into a lot of turmoil here, and it wasn't understood how we could do meetings on Zoom. I'm not making excuses at all. There is no excuse for the situation you're in. I understand the distress. I am going to, if Mr. Zelinsik would like to speak to this or any of the other council members, but what I would like to do is tell you that we will be happy to follow up with you tomorrow and figure out how we move forward in a better way. But I think Mr. Zelinsik would like to speak, and some of my other council members may as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
To call in. And again, if I dropped the ball and limited the ability for some council members to respond to you, I'm sorry. We all do our best to respond to all emails, phone calls, letters, texts. So
I appreciate it. And all of you on council that I did reach out to did respond. So thank you very much. I can't complain about that at all.
All right. And we all try. Mr. Zelinsik, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in here or if we wanted to follow up with Ms. Douglas tomorrow. Obviously, Todd.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. Just want to comment on a few things so we get the facts straight here. So, City Hall closed on March 18th. When City Hall was closed, it's still closed to date. The engineering department, along with other department heads, have been going in on a daily basis, even though we have COVID-19, since the shutdown, to ensure that we answer our phones, make sure emergency permits were issued for sewer or other things of that nature. As far as the road program, we sent a letter on May 28th once we found out the contractor's schedule because COVID had impacted a lot of people. Sent out to all the residents on May 28th of the road program for the concrete program with the schedule. Again, it was tentative. It could change. We also sent a letter out for people prior to that on May 5th as far as tree removals that would occur on any street that would happen. So that way they are notified prior to that. Any concerns or comments would then be conveyed to us, and that way we could address the concerns of the residents or anybody in the area. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we can't have gatherings. That was still an issue, obviously, until recently. So most likely, if we have problems with the trees or issues of removing trees, we get a call from the resident or those type of things that we can resolve with them. And then also with the construction program, a new tree gets planted the following year in that location. These were determined from the from the consultant through the forestry division, who's you guys are arborists. I'm not an expert in tree removal, but we want to make sure we did the overview to make sure these trees were looked at and then identified to be removed, and letters sent to residents in that location, given a couple weeks to review that letter, and then notifications out for the tree removals. But just wanted to state those type of things for purposes of that. And I did reach out to a couple council members with some follow-up, and I think Doug Moore, who's from the forestry division, who's a certified arborist, has that type of information. And again, commented on that. We had no issues from the people that we had trees, which is 7 were removed on Ladywood. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much, Todd. Ms. Douglas, I think probably the best thing, Todd, you agree, would be for you to talk to Ms. Douglas tomorrow, and then we can figure out how to move forward.
Sure. If she wants to contact the engineering department, again, we've been, even though City Hall's been shut down, been working behind the scenes. And again, we still have to remove those wood chip piles that are over there. Yes, they're still there. And I don't know how long they've been there, but I'm sure it's been a couple weeks then, but try to get that addressed itself. So.
No, and my only concern too was even when the tree stumps were taken out, there's still roots. There's giant roots, and you can tell in past streets that it's been done. There's just big like squares where the roots are, and you know as well as I do, and this is my last little comment, that these trees, the ones they're taking out are big. The ones they're replacing are not. Of course, I'm grateful there's a tree going there. All of our neighbors are too. But the trees that were there, that was part of the charm of this neighborhood, was the trees. And they're gone. the whole neighborhood's just not the same. And I'm being very honest with you. I mean, I could have bought in Canton if I wanted tiny trees, but I didn't. I bought here in Livonia because they're huge trees and it's a great neighborhood. But it's just very frustrating for homeowners, especially when we didn't get a voice. And when we did find out about the trees, my tree wasn't taken. I happened to catch the guy when he was doing it, and we begged and begged, and he looked and said, I think we can save it. But not everyone did do that, and it's difficult for a lot of people. And even though they might not have, a lot of people just take it and they say, well, they just have to do it. And if we would have had a forum, they might not have said that. So that's just where I was at with it. But thank you for responding.
Thank you very much. And as you heard, I know Councilmember Toy wants to respond, but everyone does their best. No one likes trees to come down. We don't like trees to come down. Trees have always been a big deal in the city. But thank you so much for calling in tonight. And also thank you for reaching out to council by email. We don't know about concerns unless we hear about them. And then it's very helpful when people take the time to call in or participate in Zoom, or back when we're meeting in person, come to a meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much for hearing me. I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate you taking the time. I think maybe Councilmember Toy wanted to comment.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for bringing that up. We have a lot of neighborhoods that have those kinds of issues, and you're right. We are the tree city, supposedly. So where we can, I know we try and save trees. But I also bring up a point. Do we know when City Hall is going to be open? I'm getting that question all the time, and it's adding to a lot of confusion for a lot of people. And there's no mention of it, and I don't want to be critical, but I really believe that communication and why we do these situation reports and all those wonderful things we do, we really need to give some kind of time certain on this, because people aren't being able to get things and questions. And I know our phones are ringing off the hook. At least mine have been, and or my emails. So it would really be helpful, Madam President, if we could find answers to that soon, not only for us, but for our residents as well. And obviously for our workers and department heads. Other cities are open.
Councilmember Toy, it was my understanding that Mr. Varga was to be on the line this evening to give an update on a number of things in the city. I don't see him yet, but I'm hoping that maybe.
Okay, maybe I could save the question then.
The agenda that he'll be on. He had indicated.
Thank you. I know you do. You're great.
The mayor wanted to give an update tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. With that, I see that Councilmember McCullough would like to have the floor. Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam President. Christine, I thank you for sending the emails. I think that this is an opportunity to, obviously with the whole COVID and that process, I think that normally our communication paths were more of a unique situation. So we are all about sustainability and saving as many trees as we possibly can, as I put in the email. So hopefully that process, obviously after we kind of start getting out of this trend, we can develop new processes. And then I did want to just take a quick moment. The other callers that popped in from the Livonia citizens caring about Black lives, I just kind of wanted just to touch base and say, as many of you know, your voices are being heard. And it's going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot of action. It's not going to be something that happens overnight. And know that, the best communication, you can go on livonia.gov. All of our emails and contact information are listed there. I know I've spoke with many of you. I just kind of wanted to note that your voices are being heard, and, and our doors are always open, at least mine is. So feel free to reach out. Thank you.
All right, Council Vice President Barr.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I want to primarily respond to some of the comments from earlier, but just to Christine, you were very gracious for that phone call. As has already been voiced, I hate seeing those trees go down, and Todd knows, and our folks in DPW know. I've kind of argued with them in the past about the need to do that, and I'll probably argue with them again in the future, because I do think that's a calling card for Livonia, and it is disappointing. Thanks, though, in spite of the disappointment, I appreciate the graciousness with which you expressed your concerns tonight, and they're certainly well received. Regarding the earlier comments, as you can see, we can speak if we want to, as is often the case for me when I suspect that we have a lot of people lined up to talk about one topic. I prefer to wait until the end to share some thoughts. But some information that may be helpful. Those of you that are still listening may already be aware, but someone asked about the training that our police officers go under. I'm not going to attempt to list all that training now, although I could probably do a pretty good job of it, but I don't want to take the risk of missing something or misspeaking. But what I will say is if you look on our Livonia Police Department website, Chief Cade has been very transparent with going back, I want to say at least 3 weeks ago, and several posts since, sharing the extensive training that our officers go through. And then actually the mayor's office just put out this past week, and I'm guessing you can find it on the Livonia community Facebook page, among other places, a really nice 2-page graphic that outlines a lot of that training. I don't think it actually caught everything, but it did a good job of catching a lot of it. And I'm very proud. You know, a lot of the concerns that are going on right now are there's some legitimate concerns there, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. But I, in my own personal life, have spent a good amount of time over the last couple of weeks sitting down either in person or over the phone and having conversations with Black friends of mine in the city. And one of the good things that's come out of all this is people that I've been friends with for a long time, but I'm asking some questions that I haven't asked before. And it's led to some really fruitful conversations. And I'll tell you, those conversations have been affirming in some cases, and they've been eye-opening in many cases. And I value them. One of them, actually, a guy that I was neighbors to for 12 years. Our kids grew up together, and he commented to me, he said, Scott, he said, these are the types of conversations that we need more people having. And I trust that many of you are doing the same thing. And I think that's one of the good things that can come out of this. On that note, those of you with concerns on this are probably aware that there's an event at Clarenceville High School on Wednesday that there's going to be an opportunity to hear from and express concerns and ask questions of our city administration. That's from 6 to 7:30 on Wednesday. And I'm going blind here, but I'm guessing you can find information about that on the Livonia community website as well. And then as Councilman McCullough said, I mean, every one of us is available by email. I will tell you, just being perfectly candid, when I get flooded with form letters, I don't tend to respond to those. I do read them, but I don't tend to respond to those. Those of you, and I'm guessing some of you on this call were some of these people. I honestly don't remember all the names, but I've gotten some very thoughtful emails, personal emails from people, and we've had some good exchanges via email. So welcome that as well. And finally, I'll just say that as far as the people on this council, I know, and I don't say this with any sense of derogatory, I don't say this with a sense of criticism at all. But some of you have outright said, and frankly, some of you, it's clear from your comments that paying attention to what's going on in city government is new to you. And that is not a criticism at all. We welcome you to engage and to pay attention, but it's clear that a lot of this is new. And I'll just say that, to get into a position like this of public service comes, for most of us, comes on the heels of years, if not decades, of service to this community in various facets. Most of us have long records of service to this community. And just speaking very honestly, I don't feel a need to jump just when someone says jump, when I have a life's work and a career's worth, and in my case, 17 years of service to this community in various facets. Anybody that knows me knows my character and knows what I stand for. And I don't feel a need to wave the flag of virtue just because somebody prompts me to do so. So open to conversations, open to questions, but hopefully that helps give some context to the comments tonight and even what you perceive as silence at times. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Anyone else from the council wish to speak before we go on to reports from the mayor and other city officials?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Toy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In looking at and speaking with our clerk and others, I'm very concerned as we move forward in our great city about the number of new laws and new ways of how we're handling elections. I think that it would behoove the council to do a committee of the whole meeting, invite our clerk in and any staff or whoever she deems as well, to invite them in, because I think her job has changed or expanded, if you will, as well as the staff and the costs associated with the clerk's office. And I think that has to be figured into our next budget. And I know that they're all working on their budgets right now, which I'm anxious to see for next year as well. So I would ask, Madam Chair, for a resolution to the subject matter being the clerk's department and the changes that they're facing and the costs and the procedures and their personnel of what plans our current city clerk has. And with term limits, we have her for what, another 3 years or so. And that may seem like an eternity, but we all know how quickly 3 years can go in government, especially when you're facing a virus and all these other wonderful things that none of us have a playbook for. So if I may indulge the council to think about that and perhaps consider that. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Madam President,
Right, yeah, Councilmember Jolly.
if my colleague, Ms. Toy, has just offered a motion, I will happily second that motion. I think it's an important topic. And there obviously are a lot of changes that are going on in terms of new election laws. We want to make sure that we can serve this vital role. Thank you.
So could we, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, did you get that, or would you like us to clarify what is being offered?
I have Councilmember Toy, supported by Councilmember Jolly, send to committee to discussion on elections. Is that what I'm getting?
Is that correct?
Procedures, laws, etc. Yeah.
Laws, expenses,
Personnel, procedures, new laws.
so basically all of elections.
I guess, yeah. The clerk. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Jim.
Madam President.
Yes, Councilmember Barr.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear on what's being asked. So basically an education session is what we're looking for. There's not something we're looking to accomplish here. We're just looking to learn. You're just looking to learn what changes and what changes in laws and what expenses we have going into this fall. Is that what you're asking, Councilwoman Toy, if I may, through the chair?
Yes, Councilman Barr, and how that impacts our city, our voters, our budget. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of laws, from what I understand, at the state level and otherwise that are going to impact the way they do business, or we all do business here. Thank you.
Madam President, if I may, just for a second,
please.
address Vice President's comments. Scott, I think it's important that we look at this overall. I'm sure you're aware every so often here we are being asked to spend quite a bit of money on new voting machines to ensure that we are able to accurately count those in a timely manner. I think it would be better if we took like a little bit more removed view of what was coming in regards to this and how well we are served and how capable our offices are of handling what's coming here in the next couple of election cycles. It may be educational on some point to understand what's going on in the clerk's office, but I anticipate that there may be some needs that we are not aware of that we can address as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we've got that. We've got a resolution on the floor. We have a second. We've had comments offered. Does anyone else have any comments to make regarding the resolution that's on the floor? All right, I'll go to the audience, see if anyone has any comments. And if not, we can go ahead, correct, and take a vote on this.
Vice President Barr.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic.
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly.
Aye.
Councilmember Toy.
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye. So the resolution passes. All right, so we will proceed according to the resolution. All right, with that, I'm going to go on to reports from the mayor and other city officials. We have a communication from the Department of Finance dated June 4th, 2020 regarding the forwarding of various financial statements of the city of Livonia as of March 31st, 2020. Earlier today, towards the end of the day, I had asked the mayor's office and department heads for updates on where we were on the opening of different things in Livonia. And Mr. Varga, the Director of Administrative Services, referred me back to a presentation that was given to the leadership staff on June 8th, which I think was 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to go ahead and share that update. And then in addition, several department heads did share some information late today, and I will share the updated information. So this is from, this was the world as it looked, both current and future, on June 8th. Parks and Recreation Department, field and pavilion rentals were to begin on June 15th. The Botsford and Clement Circle pools opened today on June 22nd. And I would suggest that people visit the website for specific hours. Fitness classes have been moved outdoors. They started today, June 22nd. Mr. Davis did advise me that drop-ins are not allowed. Registrations have to be done online. Playground programs will begin on June 29th. Camp Swoosh will begin on July 6th. And again, all registration is online. Music from the Heart and drive-in movies, which I'm not sure if they're drive-in or walk-in. I'm not quite clear. Those will begin July 7th. Mr. Davis, our Director of Parks and Recreation, had given me an updated that, if I understood it correctly, the first dive-in or drive-in or walk-in movie will be July 7th. And Music from the Heart will begin on July 9th. And those will both be held in the field to the east of the Perksy Recreation Center and the Wilson Farmers Market. And apologies, I just lost my presentation here. Will begin as scheduled on July 11th. All right, let me get back to my department slides here, and I apologize. Library department is, the library began calling patrons to pick up books starting, I think, a few weeks ago on Wednesday. Last week, the library, I think it was last week, began to take calls from patrons wishing to put books on hold. Curbside service will be offered at all libraries to begin, I'm not sure when that began. And doors were expected to open on, are expected to open on July 20th at the Sandburg Library. The Bennett Library will not be open to residents due to ongoing sidewalk construction. The housing department, they've been continuing to test residents for COVID, and all the normal things that go on at housing are going on. And if you excuse me 1 minute, I'll switch to another source of information. Again, my apologies, and I had misunderstood Mr. Varga. I thought he was going to be on the line tonight and wanted to give this update. Excuse me just a moment. I want to give the update from the community services, community resources department. So the updates are from community resources as follows. The Livonia Senior Transportation is running. It's been continued to run. We do not have updates on the senior. We don't have an updated date on the senior center yet. We know that other senior centers are not planning to resume programming until after Labor Day. We have not made any announcements on that. Greenmead is open on a limited basis for weddings and outdoor parties, and people with reservations or wishing to make reservations should contact Greenmead directly. I had one further update from Mr. Davis of Parks and Recreation. I think, as many people are aware, a federal judge ruled that gyms in Michigan could open on July 24th. They didn't have to open, but they could. Governor Whitmer has appealed that decision by the federal court. Mr. Davis indicated that an announcement would be coming soon about the reopening of our recreation center. And Councilmember Toy, to your question,
Yes, ma'am.
I do not have any information regarding the opening of City Hall.
Thank you.
Just one final announcement on that front. We have determined that our next meeting, July 6th, which is a regular and a study meeting, those will be held on a virtual basis. We are tentatively looking to resume our in-person meetings on July 20th, but that's subject to governor's orders, to how things are going with the city when we open City Hall. So that's it on updates regarding openings. I don't know if council or anyone else has any questions or comments or anything they'd like to add that I may have overlooked. All right, with that, we will proceed with our consent agenda. Items 1 through 3, which are listed on this evening's consent agenda, are voted on as one item. It doesn't mean that they are any less important from any other items on the agenda. It simply means that in our last meeting, in our study meeting of June 8th, they were determined not to be controversial in nature.
So moved.
Support. Support from Councilmember White. And the consent agenda, we can go ahead, Madam Clerk, and if you would please take the vote on the consent agenda.
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye, and the consent agenda is approved unanimously. And with that, we move on to our unfinished business, beginning with item number 4, amendment to the Livonia Code of Ordinances. This comes to us from the Department of Law. This is petition number 2020-02-03-01, submitted by Zymet Wozniak and Associates on behalf of Schoolcraft College to vacate. This request to vacate a section of the existing water main easement within the Schoolcraft College campus located on the east side of Haggerty Road between 6 Mile and 7 Mile Roads, 8600 Haggerty Road and 17950 College Parkway in the northwest quarter of southwest section of, the southwest quarter of section 14. And this was originally Council Resolution 319-19. Council. Yes, Councilmember Toy.
Do you need a first reading on this?
We are looking for a first reading on it.
I would be happy to give it such.
Thank you. The first reading has been offered by Councilmember Toy. Move on to item number 5. This is a proposed amendment to the Livonia Code of Ordinances. This also comes to us from the Department of Law. This is petition 2020-02-03-02, submitted by Woodhaven Retirement Community. This is a request to determine whether or not to vacate a section of the existing water main easement located at the south side of Wentworth Avenue, west of Middle Belt Road, 29667 Wentworth Avenue in the southeast quarter of section 14. And this comes from Council Resolution 62-20.
Madam President,
Chair. I heard Mr. Barr first.
I'll offer first reading on this.
Barr. Vice President Barr has offered the first read on that. Thank you. Number 6 is a roll call vote, and this is regarding another proposed amendment to the Livonia Code of Ordinances as amended. This too comes to us from the Department of Law to add Chapter 37, solicited written materials, to Title 8 to reduce litter and establish reasonable, predictable locations for the placement of unsolicited written materials on private property. The first reading was given by Councilmember Jolly on Monday, June 8th, 2020.
Madam President, I offer second reading at this time.
All right, Councilmember Jolly has offered second reading on this time. At this time, is there any comment?
Madam President, I'll just say that this is obviously something that we've heard of happening. We've all seen it happening in our own driveways for quite some time. The City Council has looked at this quite a few times over the last 5 or 6 years. Initially, the legal opinion was that we were not able to restrict these materials. Recently, there have been some cases and some new developments that have allowed the law department to see differently, and trusting their opinion, we are ready to ease this slight concern for the residents in terms of the unsolicited newspapers that appear every so often, most times weekly, in our driveways that often get thrown away. They've become really a nuisance in a lot of ways, not only for the fact that they're thrown on the ground, such as litter, but they're also a nuisance by way of the environment as well, because they're not solicited and they're just creating more waste. So I'm happy that the city council and the city administration were able to accomplish this, and I think it's a benefit to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Jolly. Yes, Councilmember Toy.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I applaud Councilman Jolly for his first and second reading on this. I'll be supporting it. It's excellent. I also want to give credit, though, to another council member, Rob Donovic. I think Rob had brought this up as well to us some time back and noticed an issue and had calls on it. And he had the forward thinking to bring it to council. And I want to thank Councilmember Donovic for that as well on this subject matter. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President and Councilman Jolly.
Thank you, Councilmember Toy. And this had been raised in our previous, in our past council, and at that time, the laws were such that we could not control this. And fortunately, again, as you mentioned, it was raised again with our new council, and laws have changed, and we were able to address it. So thank you. Any other comments? Let's see. Councilmember Donovic, and then Councilmember McCullough.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilman Toy, for your kind remarks, and Councilmember Jolly for your experience in this matter, and for offering first and second reading. I'm excited about this. Thank you to the Law Department for the hard work and the language. I know it was complicated because of the past history on this matter, but I've spoken to many residents. I myself and many of you on council and watching at home have experienced that unsolicited newspaper that ends up on your driveway, whether it be in the summertime, after a few days of it being rained on and all soggy, or in the middle of winter, and it gets clogged up in your snow blower. I think this is a great idea and common sense. If you're going to deliver newspapers, it should be in a reasonable area, like your newspaper box on your mailbox or on your porch, as opposed to the end of the driveway. So hats off to the Law Department and the City of Livonia. I think this will be something that other cities follow suit, and Livonia continues to lead the way in Western Wayne County and the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Councilmember Donovic. Councilmember McCullough.
I just like to echo the sentiments of the rest of my colleagues that this is something that I'm happy to see get pushed forward. I know there's a lot of residents out there that have complained about getting this unwanted litter. And so, again, from what Councilmember Jolly and said about sustainability and keeping this stuff from a nuisance is a great thing. So I'll be supporting it.
All right. Thank you. Let me go over. It looks like we have someone from the audience that would like to communicate with the council on this item. Trying to find. All right. It looks like we have Sarah O, who'd like to comment on this agenda item.
Hi, we're talking about those newspapers that end up at the end of your driveway, right? That's just one page, and this inserts in there. Yeah, I actually find those to be very helpful. That's where I get some of my coupons that really help me out as a lower income Livonia resident. So I just wanted to comment that some of us may find those really helpful, and I understand the need to put them in a nicer place and the desire for that. But if we can't, as long as it doesn't mean that I don't get a paper anymore, I would be supportive of it coming in a nicer fashion. That's all. Thank you.
Madam President.
Thank you very much. Yes, was that Councilmember Jolly?
Yes, Madam President. If I may respond, there will be nothing that prevents you from opting in to receive such newspapers. This only puts some limitations in regards to unsolicited newspapers. So if that's what you like to have happen, it should proceed. There may be a new procedure for opting in, though. Thank you.
All right, Council Vice President Barr.
And just to add to Jim's comment, furthermore, if I recall correctly from the language, which I don't have in front of me right now, it doesn't even prohibit them from giving you things unsolicited. It's just that it defines where it needs to be. It needs to be up in your door, under the mat, or that kind of thing. We just don't want to see this stuff stacking up on lawns or driveways is the bottom line. So thanks.
All right, thanks for the clarification. And with that, if there are no more comments, Madam Clerk, if you would go ahead, please, and take the vote.
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Councilmember McCullough?
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye. And that amendment to the Code of Ordinances will take effect after publication in the newspaper. We'll move on to item number 7. This is adoption of a resolution for special assessments upon reference properties whose owners have not paid charges connected with the 2018 and 2019 sidewalk program. This was that which were respectively contract 18G and 19G. Single lot assessments. This comes to us from the Office of the Treasurer in the original Council Resolution 59-20, 23-19, and 101-18. Council, do I have a motion?
I'll offer an approving, Madam President.
Approving from Councilmember Jolly, supported by?
Support.
Support from Councilmember White. Any discussion? I'll go to the audience. If anyone in the audience would like to comment on this agenda item. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote?
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Councilmember Toy, I believe you're muted.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye. And the resolution passes anonymously. Item number 9 is a proposed special assessment for a street lighting project. This comes to us from the Department of Assessment for the Capri Court Site Condominiums located at West Farmington Road, south of 8 Mile Road, in the northeast quarter of Section 4. This is for establishment of the assessment roll. The public hearing was held on June 1st, 2020. Council.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think we skipped number 8.
You did.
That'll make the meeting go quicker, Kim.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thank you, Councilmember White. We will go back to item number 8. This is an application for and transfer of an industrial facilities exemption certificate. This comes to us from Chris Morris of Oakland Industries LLC for a facility which will be primarily used as an office and warehouse location for Oakland Automation and Autotax subsidiaries of Oakland Industries located at 13017 Newburgh Road, Livonia, Michigan, 48150. And this is within Industrial Development Overlay District number 110. The public hearing was held on June 1st, 2020. Council, do I have a
Support.
support? Was that support from Barr? I didn't hear who offered.
Yes.
Donovic.
Donovic and then Barr?
No, it's Toy.
William Donovic.
If Barr wants it, he can have it.
I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, I'm doing my best here. Toy, it was somehow Donovic, Toy, and Barr, and I'll leave it to you, Madam Clerk, to figure out who it goes to.
I have Toy and Donovic.
Toy and Donovic. Okay, very good. All right, is there any comment from the audience on this agenda item? Seeing none, we could go ahead, Madam Clerk, and if you would please take the vote on an approving resolution for agenda item number 8.
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye. And the resolution and the transfer of the industrial facilities exemption certificate is approved. Now we go on to number 9. This is a proposed special assessment for street lighting project coming to us from the Department of Assessment for the Capri Court Site Condominiums located on West Farmington Road, south of 8 Mile Road in the northeast quarter of Section 4. This is for establishment of the assessment roll. The public hearing was held on June 1st, 2020. Council.
I'll offer an approving, Madam President.
Councilmember McCullough approving.
Support.
Support by Toy, I believe. All right, any comments? Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, we can go ahead and, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote?
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye, and the resolution is approved, and the assessment role will be established for the Capri Court Site Condominiums Lighting Project. That we go on to item number 10. So it's a proposed special assessment street lighting project. This comes to us also from the Department of Assessment for the Dover Court Site Condominiums located south of Ann Arbor Trail between Wayne Road and Norwich in the southwest quarter of Section 33. This too is for establishment of the assessment role. Public hearing was held on June 1st, 2020. Council?
I'll offer approving.
Approving resolution from Councilmember McCullough, support from Member White. Any comments? I'll go to the audience. Seeing no one from the audience wishing to comment, Madam Clerk, if you would please go ahead and take the vote.
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye, and the resolution is approved, and the assessment role will be established for the special assessment street lighting project for Dover Site Condominiums. And with that, we go on to new business, and we have one item, number 11. This is a block party. This comes to us from Colin Burkle to be held Saturday, July 4th, 2020 from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Roycroft between Woodring and Loveland with no rain date requested.
Madam Chair,
Yes, council member.
everything seems to be in order. I'll offer an approving.
Support.
I'll second that.
Seconded from council member Jolly. Council, any comments?
Madam President, if I may.
Yes, council member Jolly.
So the paperwork all looks in order, and I think this will be a nice event. I know Mr. Burkle quite well, having worked with him at the district court for about 10 years or so. This is a good opportunity to point out one of the city's valued employees. Mr. Burkle is a relatively young man, and he's worked for the city via the district court for approximately 20 years, and literally has within his mind the knowledge of pretty much everything that goes on there. As a young court officer and magistrate and attorney, I can't tell you more than once Mr. Burkle was able to educate me in things that I had not been aware of, or processes and procedures that really get down to the nuts and bolts of the judicial system. So I want to take this as an opportunity to thank Mr. Burkle for his service to the court, to the city. He's also a valued resident. He's been engaged in many issues and initiatives in our community, such as the Bike Walk Livonia plan. And knowing Mr. Burkle and his astute nature for rules and regulations, I fully trust that he will make sure that all the proper social distancing and things of that nature are completely complied with. So I just want to say thanks again to Colin, and wish him well on this event. Thank you.
Yes, council member Toy.
I just think that really Councilman Jolly wants to be invited to the block party is the reason he said that.
Yep.
I'm only joking, Jim.
There was a time.
Right in my neighborhood, so
offended, but-
I know what you mean about Colin. He's just outstanding, and so are you, Jim. So
Well, I want to give Mr. Burkle a chance to speak, but first I want to say to Mr. Burkle, you've received a lot of praise from Councilmember Jolly, and that kind of praise does not come easily.
It's free.
Councilmember Jolly, and also the fact that you have educated Mr. Jolly is that speaks for itself. So well done. And Mr. Burkle, it looks like you would like now to have an opportunity to speak. So good evening.
It's Colin's fault. Huh.
Well, thank you, councilmen and council ladies. And I I really appreciate Council Member Jim Jolly's comments there. I really appreciate that. Yeah, the block party, with weather permitting, should go off without a hitch, so it should be a good time. So I appreciate it.
All right, well, we were going to go ahead and take the vote. If no one else wants to comment, no one else wants to comment on Mr. Jolly's education for Mr. Burkle. I guess we are good. Madam Clerk, please go ahead and take the vote on Mr. Burkle's request for his block party on the 4th of July.
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
A resounding aye for Mr. Burkle here.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
A happy aye.
President McIntyre.
Absolutely aye. Mr. Burkle, congratulations and enjoy your block party.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for everything you do at our court and for our community.
Thanks.
At this time, council, I would entertain a motion to.
So move.
If I could finish. Sorry. I would entertain a request to suspend the rules. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have 2 action items this evening that we've been asked to consider. So I believe that Councilmember Toy offered the motion to suspend the rules, and it was supported by Councilmember McCullough. And if there are no comments from the audience, if we could please go ahead, Madam Clerk, and take the vote on the motion to suspend the rules and go to the action items.
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye, and the rules are suspended, and we will move ahead with action item number 1. This is a request to amend Council Resolution 381-19. This comes to us from the Engineering Division to remove Gary Lane from the 2020 Concrete Road Program and use the funds from this project for an alternative road segment. Council, do I have direction? I have direction.
Madam President,
Yes, Councilmember Barr.
I'll offer approval for the sake of discussion.
I'm sorry, Vice President Barr, not Councilmember Barr. Do I have support from Councilmember Jolly? I don't know if council would like to speak or if we'd like to hear from Mr. Zielinski first. Council, your pleasure.
I would defer to Mr. Zielinski, the expert in this matter.
Mr. Zielinski, our city engineer, if you could let us know how this came about. Sure. And before Mr. Zielinski begins, I do want to say that this illustrates what happens when citizens reach out to council on items of concern, and council responds and directs them to the appropriate department. And this is always done with the awareness of the mayor's office, and the appropriate department is able to tell the citizens how to proceed if they have a concern about something. So with that, I'll tee it up for Mr. Zielinski. Mr. Zielinski.
Thank you, Madam President, City Council members. First, may I applaud you on your haircuts. You all look great tonight. So thanks for getting out and supporting your local barber shops, whatever. But as you know, we sent out a letter to the residents in totality of the concrete repair program. Again, it's part of the millage that was passed in 2012 for 10-year renewal millage that'll expire in 2 more years. With that letter, we had some issues with people on Gary Lane, which had some brick mailboxes. Approximately 6 addresses had brick mailboxes that would impede the constructability of the road over there, concrete road. If you pour back 7 inches, we have to put steel forms, and then the steel forms, we have a paving machine that gets pulled by a cable, which again, some of the mailboxes are right next to the back of the curb. Some are a foot, some are 2 feet. There's actually one out there that has a plastic mailbox. So known to us that we sent a letter out, included in there that the brick mailbox would be removed by the contractor. They would haul it away, or if some people wanted their mailbox, we'd be happy to put on their private property if they wanted to salvage the bricks. Again, our goal is to construct the road, give them a long-lasting road. The road was built back in 1986. It's been there for 34 years. and looking to obviously do the right thing from the resident that came to a meeting back in 2017 to finally do some repairs. I didn't want to go and just do the middle part, which people say are the bad areas, because when you bring big trucks in there, it's a one-way street, you're going to tear up the entire road. So if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. That's how we want to make sure that if I go in there, it's going to be very difficult as it is, because it's a one-way in and one-way out. There's no cut through, or there's no connections, whatever. So it's very difficult for constructability. So with that, we got a petition which was sent to the Madam President's office there, and wanted to get this in front of you guys to make a executive decision, so that way, if necessary, and it doesn't want to be constructed because people want to keep the mailboxes, and or there's issues with parties and things of that nature, be happy to take the money and funds and go to another location. We have plenty of roads. There's 370 miles of roadway in the city of Livonia to maintain, but want to make sure everyone's voice is heard, because again, some people wanted the road, some people pave, some people don't. Again, we want to make an executive decision because the contractor's gonna be moving this area. We're shifting to a point where we got to go to this location. If not, I got to bypass it. I can't come back because it costs the city more money to come back and remove in that location. So appreciate your assistance in making that executive decision tonight with the input of the residents that are along that corridor. And with that, I'll yield to the president to hear anything else from the council members or the residents.
Mr. Zelinsik, could you please share with us the petition signatures? There are how many residents on Gary?
So there's a total of 19 people that signed the petition out of 27. So approximately 70% did not want the road reconstructed. So I apologize for leaving that part out. But yes,
no problem.
70% of the people that signed that petition. Again, there may be a house divided like the Spartans and U of M. Some people may want it, some people don't. But the name was on the petition. It was shown that they wanted the road not to be paved.
All right. Thank you. And at this time, Vice President Barr, and I know Council Member Toy recognized, would you like to speak, or would you like to hear? I know we've got members, I know we've got audience members from Gary.
Council President McIntyre, I do have one question for Todd.
Please, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Todd, so I understand how this process works, but obviously there comes a point, and I don't think we're here now, that street might have qualified to be reconstructed, but it's not totally falling apart. There comes a point in the future where a street has to be redone. Just from a process perspective, is this something that at any point, no matter how bad a shape the street is in, that residents can petition and have it stopped? Or does there come a point at which the city has a compelling interest to come and do it? I'm not saying that applies to this situation. I'm just speaking theoretically. How far into the future does this go?
Well, I'll speak to Farmington Hills. Farmington Hills tried to get a ordinance passed that where the road was failing, that they tried to make the residents pay for it, through an SAD, and obviously that was thrown out. But for us, I'm just trying to give you an idea. The renewal millage will be, sunset here in 2 more years, to be done. I'm hopeful that we've done a good job, that we get another 10-year renewal millage that I'm sure the mayor will want to. I'm hoping that we'll spearhead this and go back out again to get a 10-year renewal, because I think it makes a big difference in the city of Livonia. We've been doing it for almost 20 years. This is our 18th year. But nothing's guaranteed in life except for death and taxes. And I don't want to miss this opportunity. And again, as you know, it's a democratic forum here. And I'm just trying to, like a SAD, give the information to you guys. And I think, if it was close to 50%, I think, we would probably wait to getting it done. But there's an overwhelming majority that say they don't want the road paved. And I can't guarantee in 2 more years that the millage may not pass, or things could be different, worse. I don't know, but we have an opportunity now, and I'm hopeful that 10 more years we can do it, and there's an opportunity maybe to come back. But again, that's up to City Council when we go before you for future approvals and appropriations for the road program.
Okay, and Madam President, while I still have the floor, I'll make a comment I could have saved at the end, but I'll say it now, and maybe it'll save some time later. I've had the opportunity to talk. I've taken calls from a number of the residents on that street, including Mrs. Carpenter. I suspect we're going to hear from here soon. This is a scenario where it's a good opportunity to just remind all residents of Livonia that right of way between the sidewalk and the street, well, it's your responsible to maintain, and I believe you actually own it, but you don't have. You have to get city approval before you do any kind of improvements on that, any kind of structure on that, planting a tree there, or building a more permanent in this case, brick mailboxes, and what are over there are beautiful, and if this were to pass tonight, presumably they will stay, and I think that's great for the character of the neighborhood. I think they look great, but it's important for residents to remember that, and I have asked the mayor's office, as a result of this issue, if we can just make a point in future editions of the city newsletter to include a box on there, like we have a lot of other public service announcements, and just remind residents of that, because I don't fault residents for not knowing that, but it's a good time to remind people of that's not yours to do whatever you want on it. So thank you.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Toy and Councilmember Donovic, but I'd like to follow on what what Vice President Barr just said. And a number of us have had conversations with Mrs. Carpenter and some other residents of Geary Lane. And I've also talked to Mr. Bernier and Mr. Zielinski about looking at our ordinance pertaining to the right-of-ways and perhaps making it clear in the ordinance that certain structures are no longer allowed. And so that's something that we will take up separately if council would like to do so. Councilmember Toy.
Thank you very much. Much on what Councilman Barr said there at the end. My thought was, Todd, you do an excellent job for us, and I really appreciate all the hard work you do and your staff. I've had, as many of you, these calls from the residents and as I explained to them, that is right away. You don't own that piece of property. And fortunately or unfortunately, many of them have put a lot of time, money, and effort into it. So that makes it even stickier because I don't think they knew that. So as Scott and others have pointed out, perhaps in the city newsletter, but I'd also like to see in the city newsletter a council section. So when these things come up too, it behooves us to have our president or vice president that help us day to day to address some of these comments, as well as our mayor and the administration, because there's many of these coming up now with us being not there full time. We're part-time people, but more than that, perhaps the process, as we're talking about, I'm forgetting what you do, Todd. Do you hand out leaflets to them? I mean, that's old school, I get it, but we used to do that, and then we do emails now as a follow-up. Perhaps that language could be included in that as well. Maybe that would clarify some of the communication confusion for some of our residents. I know people that back up to the wooded area and use it for their property and plant gardens and such. That just happens. But the sidewalks is a great, and the mailboxes, if you will, on the sidewalk right away is a great example of some confusion, if you will. And most people were understanding when I spoke to them. I don't know what the rest of you, really spoke with them and stuff, but it's very sensitive because again, they've spent time, money, and effort. And I don't want to see them get a bad road out of it, as Councilman Barr has said. If it can wait, perhaps that's the way to go. And then if it's got to come down or, reconfigured in time, Mr. Zielinski, you are the expert on this stuff. I'm not an engineer, so I yield to your discretion on some of this.
And Madam President, real quick, as you know, we may have a water main break out there, and as you know, with the telecommunications out there, people are allowed to put telecommunications through the right of way that we have to permit in some instances. So we also have to plow and maintain the streets for these residents too. And there's big machinery that comes in through our subcontractors, Stante B&B or Great Lakes Solutions. So if they hit that and the plow damages it, we have to pay for that plow out of city taxpayers' money. And then we don't want to have liability issues where if somebody hits that mailbox, we knew about it, there's a potential issue for liability. So again, we don't go looking for stuff like you talked about in the back of people's houses or woods, but if we get a complaint, now we have to follow up and do the right thing to make sure that the people are held accountable to our standards and ordinances. Just like out in the right of way, behind the sidewalk, if you want to plant anything, it should be 2 feet behind the sidewalk. The mailboxes, I handle the permits through engineering to give them to work in the right of way, whether it's a driveway approach, whatever. They need to get a permit through the engineering department. People book brick pavers or stamped concrete. If they do that, then it's at their volition, unfortunately. And we try to work with people that want to enhance that right of way, but they have to know the rules and come to the city to get that permit. And we try to get information out to those residents. But again, we know it's sensitive. We're only trying to focus on the road to do the right thing and reconstruct that road for the residents that have had that road for 34 years, but do a better job maybe doing communication, like you said, in the newsletter, and getting additional information out to the residents as best we can.
Thank you, Todd. And then Mr. Councilmember Donovic, and then I would like to go to the petitioners.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to all.
Excuse me, not the petitioners, the audience. Go ahead, Councilmember Donovic. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. And thank you to the residents. Multiple reached out to me. I apologize if I did not respond to your email. I tried to respond to all that I did get. Just to make it clear, Mr. Zelinczyk, you as a resident, we cannot have fixed brick mailboxes, right? As long as beautiful as they look, from my understanding, we cannot have, fixed brick structured mailboxes.
And it's permitted if they come to the city right away, city engineering department. If they want to build something in the right way, they have to get permission through us. Some people, like Rosedale Gardens, have pillars over there that were permitted and constructed previously. So something that's ornamental, they have to get approval, just like their sign. If they want to put something in the right way, you got to make sure if it gets broken, they got to replace it. So the mailboxes is not a permitted use because if somebody hits it, it's a liability, just like boulders out in the right of way. Again, I don't think the ordinance part goes looking for mailboxes to go ticket people. It's this particular case where we're building the road. But bottom line, they should not be in the right of way. It's a fixed object, should meet United States Postal Service. If the mailbox was hit by a snowplow, they would get $75 or a new post and mailbox, period.
Well, Madam President, with respect to our city engineer's comment, I've spoken to multiple residents. Some residents have fixed cement brick structured mailboxes. Some have been told that they can't have that and they have to, construct different sorts of mailboxes. So I don't know if this would have to go to a committee meeting or further language from the city engineer or city attorney. But I'd like to get some more clarification on this because it seems like a lot of back and forth. And multiple residents have reached out to me about, I wanted to build a brick mailbox and wasn't allowed to, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not necessarily sure of the procedural way to go about this, but I'd like to see a little more investigation to this just to make it clear for our residents. Respectfully, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Donovic. Councilmember Jolly, would you like to speak before we go to the audience?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'll just say simply, I do understand the concerns that are raised by the residents who live on Gary Lane at this moment. But as we're looking at critical infrastructure updates, such as a new road, it's not only about the people who live there today, it's about the people who might be living there in the future. People who might be buying these houses as we go forward. It's about the people who live in the surrounding streets and the surrounding neighborhood as well. I understand the concerns that have been raised, but they don't necessarily make a whole lot of sense in terms of the long-term strategic planning of the city and the updates and infrastructure that we build. So, when we're done with this vote, I will be offering a motion to have the law department craft a stronger ordinance that directs this area specifically. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, I'm going to go to the audience, beginning with, I think that's Mrs. Carpenter. Good evening, Mrs. Carpenter, and thank you for staying on and waiting for the item. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I've listened to you guys. And at this point, I guess as far as with the mailboxes go, our house was built in 1989, 1990, and it's like there was nobody. I mean, I've had every inspector here in the yard that nobody's ever said anything. I've had 2 mayors here in the backyard for the garden walks. And it's just aggravating. I mean, to get a letter and tell you you've got a picture and that your mailbox has to come down, which is actually part of the house. And it's upsetting. And then as far as the road, it's like the road be for a lot of people here, there are some elderly people. The other thing is we've had a brand new couple that just moved in. They're planning on having a graduation party. They've only been here 2 months. They signed the letter. More people are having baby showers. There's going to be another communion party. And it's just because this is a cul-de-sac, there's just one way in and one way out. It would put a strain on this road and the people that live here. It would just be a real hardship. I believe that Mr. Zelinczyk talked to Gary Biacco about the road because he's in cement. Gary was kind of up on it, either 50-50, and the more he looked at it, he said it could be patched, there could be odds and ends, but he said it really wasn't all that bad. But I really appreciate everybody's input. I appreciate the time you spent with me, the phone calls, the everything. It's just, I can't say enough, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. And with that, we will move on to, I'm not sure if it's Mr. or Mrs. Maxwell. Good evening.
Good evening. As our neighbor was saying, we are newer to the neighborhood.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And received the correspondence, and we have my household did initially sign the petition. However, with further information brought more questions in diving into the information provided. And as previously mentioned, there's some questions somewhat unanswered in the information provided. And the first one is that it talks about potentially removing trees to accommodate the road. But it does not talk about how we would find that out as a homeowner if your tree would be removed. It does talk about potential tree replacements, but it doesn't talk about how we would find that out. I would simply just like to know that as a homeowner, even understanding that the trees are in the public right of way. In addition, again, as previously mentioned, this is a cul-de-sac. So unlike other free-flowing streets, just simply would like to better understand how the traffic would flow, because there can't be a one-way because there's no outlet to the south.
Anything else, Mr. Maxwell?
And then I have one more, and that is that it sounded like if I heard Mr. Zelzik talk about, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
No problem.
That this is a potential, I thought I heard that if it's not done this year or even postponed, it sounds like there's a possibility of it not occurring. And that's something I would hate to see because, again, as a brand new owner, I do have a future here, and that concerns me. So although I do have these, these balanced concerns, I think the overall issue would be the long-term viability of the road.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Max. I should have said this at the beginning. Communication on agenda item. Audience members are limited to 2 minutes. So you went just a little bit over, Mr. Maxwell, but I wanted to let you finish since I hadn't said that before. Mr. Zelinczyk, would you like to address the issues that Mr. Maxwell raised?
Sure, if I could, please, Madam President. Just to be clear, there are no trees on Gary Lane to be removed. And if the trees were to be removed, we always send a letter to the residents. Typically, we have a night meeting with all the residents for the road program or asphalt program. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, we could not do that. We have contracts that were signed in March, right after the pandemic happened, that there's a start date, whatever. So just to be clear, there's no trees being moved on Gary Lane. As far as the road itself, again, as I said, there's a millage that was passed in 2012. It has 2 more years left on it. If it gets renewed in 2022, I'm hopeful it'll be another 10-year renewal. I can't say that. It's up to the voters. But I can tell you, I don't know if it was renewed, when you would be back on the list, or, it all depends on the Michigan winters and how the road would deteriorate over a certain period of time. But I'm just telling you, there's an opportunity now to fix it. It's basically, do you want the mailboxes or do you want the road fixed? That is the choice here tonight. Again, I'll let the voices speak, but I just let you know we have an opportunity to fix the road with the millage money that's set aside now, and go from there. Thank you.
Before I go back to the audience, Mr. Zelinczyk, I'd like to ask you a question. If the road is not fixed this year, is there an opportunity to fix it next year, or then are they does Gary Lane go off the list?
I'd rather take the money and go to another location. It all depends. We rate the roads every 2 years. So this year we're going to go rate out 370 miles of roadway. The next time will be 2022. By that time, the millage may or not be there. It's a I don't know question other than if you bypass it now, chances are probably slimmer down the road that you'll get your road fixed unless it falls apart completely to a point where it's going to cost the city more money to keep running out there for temporary fixes. It may be just a temporary fix or medium temporary fix, but again, it's very difficult because it's one way in, one way out. And again, prices don't go down, they go up as we move forward. So it's less roads we can fix in the future.
And that's a 2-year process, Mr. Zalinsik, when we rate the roads?
Every 2 years, this year we go out every 2 years and we'll rate 370 miles of roadway. We'll put it on the website. We'll show every section, every 36 sections as far as where they stand. Got
it. So just to clarify what Mr. Zalinsik is saying. So what we've done this year gives us our 2-year plan. And is that correct, Todd?
We go out typically, we go out in June, July, and August. We try to have the numbers by September for the Citizens Road Advisory Committee meeting. That's how it got on the list. Some gentleman on the road came to the meeting and asked about the road being fixed. And we've been monitoring to the point where, hey, we believe it should be fixed. The middle portion is coming to the point where it's deteriorated. But if I'm gonna go in and fix it, I'm not just gonna fix the middle portion because I'm gonna tear up the road. It's already cracked in some of the areas and the joints are failing. We're gonna make it worse. And then people are gonna complain, why'd you fix the middle of the road and left it damaged on the other end? And that's why I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it once and do it right.
Okay. Mr. McCullough, would you like to speak before I go back to the audience?
Thank you, Madam President, through the chair to Mr. Zalinsik. So I'm assuming when you talk about the 2-year plan, that is the PASER rating, correct?
That's correct.
With this, how, I don't have the notes in front of me, but do you have the number of the PASER rating on this particular street?
I think it was a 4 or 5, whatever. It depends, where you're at. The middle portion is probably 4, the rest of it's 5. But again, constructability wise, you only have one way in, one way out. So you got to be very careful. I've been through this before where you damage the road trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And then they come back to us. And the other part is, when we do regional paving, we're in that area. I may be down in the south end of town for the next 2 years taking care of West Chicago down by Inkster, and I can't get back up there. They're saying, why can't you fix the road? Well, I'm trying to maximize the tax dollars we got for the millage. To do the right thing is maximize those tax dollars for repairing the roads.
Now, something like this, though, obviously, if the residents and you have a construction window, obviously with COVID didn't help anything with getting civil going. So my question would be is, in the event that this gets pushed off, obviously our joint and crack program could go in to maybe extend the life of this road a little bit more, and then we could look at the next PASER. Or I guess I'm before I cast my my call on it.
I think we're throwing bad money if you do a joint sealing. I think coal patching, DPW's out there coal patching. Again, I don't know. You saw 2 years ago we had a Michigan winter where Wayne County gave us, some money to help fix those roads. I can't predict the weather. I can't predict the millage. All I can say is there's an opportunity to fix the road. If they want it fixed, I'm happy to fix it. If they don't, and they want to keep their mailboxes and parties, I'm moving on to the next road and doing the right thing. Is I got to maximize those tax dollars someplace, the millage money, and someplace else. There's plenty of need someplace else. I'm just trying to make sure we do the regional paving in that area. And if you go down to Van Road, which is to the west of there, take a look at that road. Go down. I invite people to drive down Van Road, just past Bicentennial on the south side, and look how those joints have failed. If people want to live with gravel roads over 2 or 3 years, that's up to them. But again, I can't predict how they're gonna fail or what the timing's gonna take. But there's an opportunity to fix the road now, and I'm offering that. And City Council approved that last fall with the Hard Rock with AEW and Hard Rock Concrete bid that was recently given in March.
Okay. Councilmember Toy, did you want to speak before we continue with the audience? Hey, you need to unmute, please.
Mr. Zalinsik, real quick, if I may just ask him a question, Madam President.
Please.
Todd, with the mailboxes that these folks have put up, decorative and more, what would we call it, more
ornate?
Yeah, and brick, etc. I know that the city isn't responsible for that. Don't get me wrong, but if this road had to be done this year, or that's the decision of myself and colleagues tonight, how best they have to disassemble those, right? Or whatever, right? I mean, they got to get them out of there those trucks would destroy them? I don't know. Help me understand that.
So we'd use the excavator. The contractor would have an excavator. We'd be happy, I said, we'd be happy to take those brick mailboxes and put them behind the sidewalk on the private property if they want to salvage
Okay.
those bricks. If not, we can just scoop them up and take them away. But again, I'm trying to do whatever's right for the residents. We wanted to, again, like President McIntyre had said, we want to get notifications out, have the dialogue, and do the right thing at the end here. We appreciate all the input from all the residents on Gary Lane. At the end of the day, I want to do the right thing. If they want to save their mailbox, I'll be happy to salvage it, work with the contractor. If they want to remove it completely, I'll be happy to take it away. But again, at the bottom line, if it gets hit 6 months from now by a snowplow, guess what's going out there? A post in a mailbox. Please realize that.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I guess I didn't hear that in the beginning. I apologize. But there's a sensitivity here, both
Sure.
the city and the resident, and I'm just trying to make the best decision possible. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. This time I'm going to go back to the audience, and it looks like we have Mr. Young. Good evening, Mr. Young.
Good evening. I'm a Livonia resident. Good evening. I'm a Livonia resident. For most of my life, I was briefly away on active duty Army. I grew up on Gary Lane from knee high all the way to, I just recently purchased a house from my parents June 1st. I'd like to say first and foremost, thank you, Mr. Zielinski, for reaching out to my father. He had some concerns for you. You were quick to address them, and I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Mr. Jolly, I appreciate your reserve and pushing the project forward, regardless of what council decides here tonight. The bottom line is that I ride motorcycles. I have small family members. There's a lot of gravel. We're not talking about just cracks on the roads. We're not talking about just another street where you drive you down in your trucks or cars. There's a safety measure that no one's addressing. And I'd just like council to understand that we're not talking about just roadways. We're talking about a place where children play and, families.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Young?
I'd like to also welcome Mr. Maxwell to the neighborhood. We haven't been able to properly welcome him, in these COVID times. And I understand that strain and hardship is a real thing that, with the cul-de-sac construction, but I really think that you guys have done your due diligence. The city engineers really do seem like they can come up with an adequate plan. And I hope we can find a positive resolution to keep, taxpayer dollars paying off.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments. They're appreciated, and thank you for your service to our country. All right. I'd like to go to, I'm not sure if it's Mr. or Ms. Slesak, and I apologize if I mispronounced that.
Hi, my name is Christine Slazak. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. With respect, I think that the mailbox issue has been completely overplayed here or over analyzed. As one of the members who was upset about this, who has one of these brick mailboxes, I admit that I was certainly upset about the potential for having that removed. My house was built in 1988, and I think the mailbox was built sometime around that time. And through the years, it has stood despite the limited plows that come down this small street with our cul-de-sac. And to find out that now all of a sudden there's an ordinance against it was a little unnerving, but that is not the reason why I signed this petition. We got this notification really with limited information. The first thing that we saw was that the mailbox was coming down. The next thing that we saw was that the trees might come down. And there really was, and then there was also a comment about how we couldn't speak because there were no meetings at the time, given the COVID nightmare that we're all enduring. So I think really the issue with most of the people that I've spoken with on the street is less about mailboxes and more about the timing of this project and the inability to speak about it. We've got, as you all know, a global pandemic going on right now. So you've got people working from home. You've got school that's been canceled. You've got kids that are running all over the place. And given that we are on a cul-de-sac, closing half the street just is an absolute nightmare. So I think maybe we need to talk about the logic of it, because if the ultimate decision, I signed this under the impression that we were asking to move the timing of this project, not to be removed until 2022. So I appreciate the dialogue that's occurred around that topic. I guess I don't even know where I stand now, because if it's not going to be done until 2022, I'm not sure that I'm in support of being on that petition. But I think it's a huge inconvenience given everything that's going on right now. And I think that we need to better understand how this is going to affect the residents, many of whom are elderly, and the community, given what's going on right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Slezik, for joining us and for your comments. I'm now going to go to Mr. Ciavaglia, and I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, hi, thank you. David Travaglia.
I'm sorry, Chavalia.
Yep, no worries. Just real quick, I'll try to be to the point. I mimic what Dean Slezik was saying. We signed this petition, or I signed a petition that this was maybe a postponement and not a cancellation. We have some elderly people on the street, some of which have some health issues that require getting out of their house daily or weekly for treatments. We've had a couple graduation parties scheduled, I believe, for this time frame as well. And so I support the, say, postponing of this a year. That's what I was led to believe. But we also have to keep in mind, we didn't get the letter till 2 to 3 weeks ago. And so it's very tough, again, on a cul-de-sac to make arrangements, to work things out with neighbors, with people that need to be able to get in and out of the area. And maybe if we had more time to plan, 2-3 months to plan the logistics of how we would share each other's driveway, then maybe even know timeframes when so-and-so might have to be taken to a hospital appointment, that we could, maybe make this happen. But just the time frame of 3 weeks to really get this all coordinated amongst everything else that's going on, I'm just a little concerned. I do think the street needs it, so I do agree with Todd there. And again, as far as the mailboxes, I don't have one, so I'm really indifferent. I understand people's concerns, but I will say this on the mailboxes. I've heard it say a couple times that it's a safety issue. And I find it a little humorous, just because, we have trees that are two feet off the curb. We have light posts that are 2 feet off the curbs. If the mailboxes are a safety hazard, you could argue that these light posts and trees are hazards as well. So those are my comments. Thank you guys for taking the time to hear from us today. And I appreciate your guys' service to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savalia. Appreciate your taking the time to join us this evening and share your thoughts. Good evening. I see this is Amy J.C. Good evening.
I believe that's me, Giovanni Naccarato.
Oh,
I also
okay.
live on Gary Lane, neighbor of David Chavalia as well. And I agree with him. I think we received this notice on a late notice, if you will. A lot of us have pre-planned parties, even though we have this COVID crisis on our hands. And it was asking a lot of us really to coordinate the parking and traffic logistics on this street, with only having a one-way traffic for a period of 2 weeks. To park 4 additional vehicles across the street on my neighbor's property is just uncalled for. So it's making it very difficult for us to, make a decision on how we're going to do this in the next 2 weeks, or the 2 weeks that they're going to close the west side of this Gary Lane. And therefore, I agreed to hold off on this until next millage if need be.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Thank you for your comments. We will now go to Kimberla, and I think, Casey, I need your help because Kimberla's Zoom. There we go. Pardon me. Kimberla.
Hello? We're on Amy.
Zoom, are you with us, Kimberla?
Hello?
We're on Amy.
Yes, this is Amy Chavalia. I just wanted to add, my husband spoke. I just wanted to add, another thing that's really affecting us with this road construction is, we have a special needs daughter who has therapies to get to. I feel like with everything that's happened with the COVID-19 lockdown and how this has affected us, having to park our car elsewhere and walk with her is going to be so terribly hard. We were under the impression by signing the petition that maybe this would hold off for a year or two. We both want the construction done. We know it needs to be done. But at the same time, our current situation is not really going to allow us to easily park my car elsewhere and walk with her to get her to therapies. Anybody that knows her would know that this is really not feasible for us right now. So that's another reason. That's just something I wanted to add to what my husband Dave had mentioned, that we didn't really have a lot of notice and we don't have, it's really not going to be, it's not going to work for us at this point, but we do want it done and we understand it needs to be done. Hopefully, we can get it done in the near future. That was our impression when we signed the petition. Like I said, for us, it wasn't about the mailboxes because we don't have one.
Understand. Thank you for sharing your perspective, Mrs. Chavalia. Appreciated.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Kimberla. As we need a little help from IT. There we go. Good evening, Kimberla. Let's see. Unmute. There we go. Oh. We're trying to get you unmuted so you can speak there. Let me try this again. There.
Does that work?
Yes, that works. You're on.
Oh,
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. Hello, everyone.
Just one moment. Just so you know, you have an older version of Zoom that requires us. It's no problem, but it requires us to do a few things differently. So you participate in the meeting. So you may want to update your Zoom to a more current version. So that was the delay. So thanks for your patience.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback over what other of my neighbors have been saying is that I think it was not so much of the as it is the time frame of this. Like we received the letter, maybe 2 weeks ago, and a lot of us feel as if we just got done with the pandemic and we're just finally to be able to leave our houses a little bit and do things. And I know a lot of the older people have had stressors on them about being able to get to the doctors, and now that they are, and it was more about the timing frame and the notice. And I guess we've been asked about what is the actual plan on the one-way street. Have we talked about what the plan is of how we will be able to get in and out on a one-way street?
Mr. Zalonczyk?
And just clarify, obviously there's never a good time to construct a road. We basically have in Michigan from mid-April to November 15th to construct a road, if we're lucky, right? So for this, obviously we want to make sure we have ability to get a fire truck or ambulance down to a house or any of that nature if there's an emergency situation, correct? So we do part with construction. We remove one side of the street first. The goal was to leave the cul-de-sac at the end so people could drive down one side of the street, use the cul-de-sac, come back out if necessary. But during the day, it's gonna be very difficult because there's gonna be equipment and construction equipment down there. Once the one side is removed, poured, and cured, usually typically 5 to 7 days, we flip over and do the other side. And then the last piece would be by the cul-de-sac, the little piece in front of the cul-de-sac, and there's a couple patches around the back side. So it'll be a 3-phase endeavor. But again, I can't control the weather. So if I said next week we're gonna start and it rains for 3 days, or it's good weather, it could be done sooner because we got good weather and the breaks we take for strength on the concrete could be done in 5 days instead of 7 days. So typically we be proactive and say it's 2 to 4 weeks. But again, COVID caused us not to have a meeting. Typically in the meeting we go over all this stuff. The city council approved it. This was on the website last fall. The map was on the website last fall. We also provided the information back in May. And as you know, the Livonia magazine came out June 1st and it was delivered to all the residents. But we tried to get as much out as we could. We were shut down. We did send a letter out May 28th, right after the holiday, and most people got it the first week in June. and give you 3 weeks to, get the information through there, just to give you, typically 10 days notification. And then the schedule may change as we move forward. We probably won't, this road was approved, we probably wouldn't start, for, several days yet, 7 to 10 days.
Correct. I think what we're just saying is that had we known, I mean, I guess none of us have ever lived through a pandemic, and I know it's never a good time, but this is again, the least great time to do it because of the pandemic, and we're all just coming out of it, and we've had no notice. And I know that we've had parties planned where had we have had the notice, we could have put it at a parent's location or a grandparent's location, and now we're left scrambling to make those plans in a week's time.
We typically work with the residents. Some people, we've worked on weddings, graduation parties. We've even helped people that are handicapped. We put handicap signs. Again, this is a unique situation. It's one way out. But we've worked around those parties. Again, I can't control the weather. We may start next week and then it rains for 3 days, and your party may be the next day. So it's all independent.
No, I understand.
We put the inspector's name down there. So if there's information needs to be dismayed, we can work around those events, whatever, and say, okay, we may go down to Van Road, do that road, come back to do this road if we need to. But again, we got to get the information out at some point in time. We try to do the best we can with City Hall being closed and getting that letter out to you based on the contractor's information at the end of May. And we had rain at that time. And again, this schedule is still old, but I want to update it. Usually at the beginning of July. So we always work around the residents and make sure that there's accessibility for emergency vehicles, but also try to work as best we can on your parties or weddings or baptisms or whatever it may be to accommodate the residents that live along that roadway.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I know we have additional persons from the audience to speak. I'm going to ask first Mr. McCullough, then Councilmember Jolly if they'd like to speak or if they have questions before we go to the other audience member. Brandon?
We could go to the audience. I'm good with that before I speak.
Councilmember Jolly? Okay. All right, we're going to go back to the audience. And Mr. Lynn, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. We can.
I would like to add some commentary on this. Kind of second the sentiment Mr. Maxwell expressed earlier, and I also like to welcome Mr. Maxwell to the neighborhood as well. Basically, the only thing I would like to say, I think there's residents on this neighborhood that express both sides of the sentiment here already, so I'm not going to add anything to that. The only thing I would like to comment or maybe make a request here is that if the council is going to make a decision on this based on the partition that was signed expressing 19 out of 26, I believe I heard, of signatures.
19 out of 27, correct.
If any of the councilmen is going to be voting on that fact in terms of representation of the neighborhood, I would like that to be revisited if possible, mainly due to the reason that I felt the timing of this partition and also the understanding of what would happen if this project is postponed and whether or not another millage could be approved and when the actual construction will actually begin. I think I would speak for myself here, but I would guess that many members many residents that signed that partition may not have a full understanding of that. So a little bit more detailed understanding of that before we express our vote on this from a neighborhood standpoint would be appreciated.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Appreciate your comments and taking the time to join us this evening.
Thank you.
I'll go back to the council members who wish to speak. Councilmember McCullough. You need to unmute.
You're on mute.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair to Todd. Todd, just a quick question. I mean, obviously, everything we're hearing here right now that the road needs to get done. It's a long-term asset for our city. It's got to happen. What we're hearing from the citizens are, at least from what I'm listening to, is they want it. It's just the timing. Is there any way possible to move around the schedule to bump this to, a September, October project? Or, is everything pretty much aligned and ready to roll?
Yes, contractor's starting over on section 1, which is near Brentwood, which Nagel's doing. We're on Pembroke. Then he's going to do fire station 3, I believe, the parking lot. then the goal was to do Van or Gary Lane. You know, ideally, those streets are right in the location of where he's moving his equipment as he moves west, then head south to Section 8, which is Gulfview, Northgate, Bobridge area, then continue on down by Newburgh and Levan and 5 Mile. So for him to go back all the way back up there, he's going to charge the city money for remobbing, whatever, which doesn't make any sense when I can do additional locations itself. Again, like I said, there's never a good time to do a road, and I want to do the right thing while we're in the area. Again, I sorry about the petition, you know, it was misconstrued, whatever, but again, I'm glad we're having a dialogue tonight, but I don't believe it's very difficult for him to go back when we got other streets to do down in the area to complete by the end of October, and it's already June, almost end of July.
Yeah.
I mean, beginning of July.
Thank you for that.
Welcome.
All right, Councilmember Jolly.
Thank you, Madam President. So with the additional comments, I am sympathetic to some of the voices that have been raised tonight and some of their circumstances. What I think that needs to be made clear here is, unfortunately, there's no guarantee that the city comes back even in 2022. The millage is up in 2022 for renewal for another probably 10 years. You might be looking at 10 years, if even within 10 years, to have this addressed. There's a lot of streets in the city of Livonia that would love to have this done as soon as possible, and there's a lot of lobbying that happens to get their streets done. For that reason, we have the Independent Road Commission of residents who go out and check out the roads and determine which roads are in most need. That's the process that happened here that identified your road. You know, with everything that's been said, you know, unfortunately, I can't support skipping this. We've already heard from Mr. Zielinski that economically, it's not possible to reschedule it for this year. So I think it's in the best interest of the city and the taxpayers to go ahead with this project. And I'm sorry for the inconvenience that it's going to cause. But I will tell you that, you know, there are very few professionals like Mr. Zielinski who work with residents as well as he does. And I have no doubt that he will do everything he can to accommodate the situations that you've said. Does that mean that he'll be able to alleviate all concerns? Probably not. But you have a great person with open ears that will do so if he's able to. So I wish you all well, and I'm sorry that I'm not going to be able to vote to put this off. Thank you.
Vice President Barr.
Yeah, probably similar to what Councilman Jolly is saying. I actually came here prepared to support this tonight. Every call that I got was related to the mail. I heard an echo there, sorry. I think I'm good. Every call that I received on this street was related to frustration over the removal of the mailboxes, and I was sympathetic to that. But as I listen more, and I told the people that I talked to, I told them what their options were on this, and I told them the option that they could petition, and they've gotten those petitions, and so thank you for going to the effort of doing that. It's gotten everybody to the table, and we've heard a lot of feedback tonight, which is good. But we're talking about the long-term infrastructure of this neighborhood here, and as much as I agree that those mailboxes are beautiful, we are talking at this point mailboxes versus a road, which is going to get repaired at some point anyway, whether that's 2022 or whether that's 2032. I don't know if it's short-term or long-term, but at some point a road needs to be replaced. And this is one of those times it's hard because you've got a petition with 70% of a street that's saying we want something different. But I honestly think it's in the best interest of that neighborhood. I'm probably not going to be making any friends here, but to prioritize the road over the mailboxes. And I do think that we're hearing not only there's 30% of the street that didn't sign the petition, but we're hearing a lot of input tonight that people that signed the petition are second guessing that. I think it's in the best interest to redo the street. So I came here ready to support this tonight based on the petition. But at this point, I think it's in the best interest to move forward. And I'll say this too, as far as the inconvenience, I am sympathetic to that. My last home in Livonia, where we lived for 11 years, was on a cul-de-sac. I lived on the cul-de-sac at the end of the court, and we had our street completely reconstructed. I know the inconvenience that it is, but the thing is, even if we were to delay this project, that's just pushing the inconvenience onto somebody else. No matter where we redo these roads, there is some temporary inconvenience. There's never a good time to do it. But I can also just as confidently assure you that when it's done, every single time you turn onto that street, you're going to be thankful for that road. And I would even argue, as beautiful as the mailboxes are, it's going to lift it's going to have a more positive impact on the value of your homes than those will. So with all that being said, at this point, I'm going to withdraw my approving actually, and I'm going to offer a denying if there's support.
Support.
Support, who was that from, Rob?
Yes.
Okay, support from Donovan, Susie.
Madam President, just so the record's clear, I was the supporter on that initial motion by Mr. Barr. I'll remove my support as well.
Okay, that's where I was going next.
I apologize, Councilmember Jolly.
Thank you, Councilmember Jolly. Mr. Donovan, Councilmember Donovan.
Thank you, Madam President. Like many of my colleagues, I am extremely sympathetic to the inconveniences that any new construction brings, whether you're redoing your kitchen, like Councilman McCullough has been doing, or whether you're redoing your roadway. It is always inconvenient, but the end result is what we all want, a nice brand new road. I wish my road was being redone. I mean, it's a long day of work and you're driving down your street hitting bumps and potholes, and that's not fun. So I am extremely sorry for the inconvenience, and I hear you. I was coming to this meeting thinking that I would support delaying this as well, but listening to Mr. Zielinski, which is a very capable city engineer who goes out of his way to help residents as much as he possibly can, managing many personalities, managing a huge project with many moving parts and many different employees from different companies. That's not easy, but he's doing his best to reach out to residents and try to alleviate any sort of those stresses that are very serious. I understand many of the comments that residents made tonight, and they are serious. And I know that Mr. Zielinski will do his best to work those. But I would be very fearful that we are going to be hurting residents in the future by not doing this, because like we've heard tonight, this roadway may not be fixed for 2 years, might not be fixed for 10 years. We just don't know. And I think it's imperative that we have an opportunity now to fix an issue and to increase property values like Councilman Barr has said. So again, thank you to all the residents that helped and brought this issue up, but I think it's important that we do fix an issue that is currently facing our city.
All right, thank you. Councilmember White.
Most of what's been stated is pretty, I would be repeating my fellow colleagues because as I listened to the residents who spoke tonight, the overriding message I was getting is nobody was saying that the road doesn't need to be fixed. It was the timing issue. But if it's a matter of the certainty of getting this road fixed, which needs to be fixed, versus the uncertainty of it never getting fixed or getting fixed in 10 years and having the residents have to deal with a road that's deteriorating, I just can't support that. And so while I am also sympathetic to the inconvenience it's going to cause to the residents, I know our city engineer will do his best to work around their commitments and their issues and their family considerations to the best that he can. But I think the time to get it fixed is now, while we have the funds and we can provide certainty to the end goal, which is repairing a road that needs to be repaired. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Let's see, Councilmember Toy.
Thank you, Madam President. Just real quickly, just a point of kind of order on this. Councilman Jolly had suggested we go to law for some more verbiage and things, so we clarified this kind of, if you will, issue on right-of-ways, et cetera, when we do things. We're not precluding that, right? I mean, is that just my direction, Jim, that you did, if I may ask Jim? And
my understanding
is this formal or informal? Yes.
My understanding was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Jolly, you intended to offer that after we vote on this item.
Oh, okay.
You are correct, Madam President. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Just didn't want to lose it.
Nope, thank you. So we have a denying resolution now on the floor, and I don't see anyone else from the audience or from council that wishes to speak. Again, I think this has been a lot of good information tonight. And, you know, this is the kind of dialogue that we can have when residents engage us and we get them in touch with the department, and everybody gets a chance to get more information and hear where everyone's coming from. Before we take the vote, we do have one additional person from the audience, Megan, who wishes to speak or who was just there and who now is no longer there. Megan, if you do wish to speak, this would be your opportunity because we're about to take the vote. All right, I do not see Megan again. I see no one else in the audience who wishes to speak. So, yes, Madam Clerk, do you have a question?
Well, I just want to clarify, because we've got a denying motion,
right?
But I'm looking at the motion here in front of me on the agenda, where it says to remove Gary Lane from the 2020 concrete program. So to remove Gary Lane,
Motion is a denying.
is a yes vote on the denying motion leaves Gary Lane on the list. Okay, I just want to make sure that we have this clear because we've got remove and deny and everything straight there.
Yeah, so we have a denying. So yes vote will not take Gary Lane off the list. A no vote is to support Gary Lane. Scott, did I say that wrong?
Madam President,
Vice President Barr.
the request was to remove Gary Lane from the list. The motion is a denying. So a yes on this motion leaves Gary Lane on the list and the construction continues.
Got it. Clarifying that.
I just wanted clarification before we go to the vote, because sometimes when they're like this, it can be confusing.
Okay, I'm going to ask the Vice President to say that one more time because this is.
All right. The request was to remove Gary Lane from the list of road repairs to not repair the road.
Right.
What I've offered is a denying resolution saying, no, we do want to repair the road. And we think it's in the best interest of the community to do that. And so a yes vote on this would result in Gary Lane being reconstructed this year. A no vote on this would open us up to other discussion.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, Madam Clerk, will you please take the vote on the denying resolution, in which a yes means Gary Lane gets repaired this year's schedule, a no vote means it does not get repaired as scheduled.
Vice President Barr.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic.
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly.
Aye.
Councilmember Toy.
Aye.
President McIntyre.
No. So the denying resolution carries 6-1. The construction will proceed as scheduled with Gary Lane. Yes, Mr. Zalinsik.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to ask if the people on Gary Lane could call into the engineering department and tell us when your events are occurring, so that way I can work around their schedules on parties, and maybe you said go to Van Court first and then skip over to Gary Lane. But again, I want to work with the residents that are out there to do the right thing. We have a great contractor, Hard Rock Concrete. We have a great consulting, AEW and their team. But again, the more information we have, the better we can plan for people's events and work around those events. And again, appreciate everyone's time and efforts to talk through this process to help us, plan accordingly. And again, I'm not, with COVID, I do, try to get the letter out as soon as I could. And we, I do apologize on the delay on that. But again, we tried to get the letter out as soon as we knew the contractor's schedule because he was delayed due to COVID. But I want to work with the residents and try to get this road constructed as less painful as possible, get in, get out, and hope we have good weather and people can move forward with their ongoings and make sure that people get doctor's appointments, special needs people that are there, or any handicap folks. And again, we had a gentleman come on tonight. He's buying his parents' house. He called me to see that, can you get a moving truck in there? We work around people. They have roofs that are done or whatever needs to be done. We have Bernie Ross from AW, that number there in the letter, or the engineering department at 466-2571. Please call us to let us know your events. so we get them on the calendar and see what the best time would be done for this road to work with you guys at earliest convenience. Thank you.
And that's why
Thank
Todd
you.
Zelinsk's the best in the business. Sorry, Madam President.
No, that's quite all right. And at the beginning of the meeting, when we introduced our department heads and we referenced that they're great department heads, this is a great example of why. Thank you, Todd. And just one final thing. Somebody, I think on this item mentioned that we've never lived through a pandemic before. That goes for the folks at City Hall too. And we've had people, we've had almost entire departments on furlough. We've had, prohibitions against starting certain projects. So we understand and appreciate how difficult this is for the residents. And all we ask is that you understand, because this has made things more difficult for us to accommodate residents. So, the mutual understanding is very, I think, beneficial. And finally, I think Councilmember Toy wanted to on this.
Well, and that's the other reason I asked when City Hall was going to be open, because you have a lot of residents with some confusion, and we need to get that message out, or thereabouts, timing-wise. But more than that, I wanted Jim Jolly to throw up his resolution, if he would.
Yeah, just because of the, I know this has come up a couple times through the last couple of years that we have been made aware of. I would just ask the council, I'll offer a resolution to direct the law department to create an ordinance that more simply clarifies the rules and regulations in regards to any structures or items that are built in the right of way, and what happens in terms of penalties or removals going forward. Thank you.
Support.
All right. Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience? Councilmember Toy.
I just pressed the button to lower my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Pardon me. I'm sorry.
All right. Seeing no one, we will go ahead, and if the clerk would please take the vote on the resolution that Mr. Jolly has offered, and I forget who seconded it, sorry. Councilmember.
It was Councilmember Toy that supported.
Yes. I would like to, if that's all right.
Yes, that is. All right. Would you go ahead, please, Madam Clerk, and take the vote?
Vice President Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly,
Aye.
Councilmember Toy,
Aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye, and the resolution carries, and we will refer this to the law department. And with this, and we go to item X2, and I apologize, I need to find my paperwork on item X2 so I can read it correctly. Too many papers tonight. Here we go. I'm sorry, I was looking for the wrong paper. All right, and we've already suspended the rules. We don't need to do so again. Item X2 is a request to schedule a closed committee of the whole. This comes to us from the Office of the Mayor for the purpose of discussing negotiations of collective bargaining agreements. Council.
Madam President,
Vice President Barr.
I'll offer an approving resolution.
Support.
Madam President.
Madam President.
Wait, let me just make sure we've got this correct. Support from Councilmember Donovic. Yes, Councilmember Barr.
Yeah, I just, with the motion on the table, I'll just speak to this. We've had some communication from residents on this already. And this is typical procedure. When there are collective bargaining agreements to discuss, it's typical to take this into a closed committee of the whole because of the sensitive nature of those agreements. That is not to hide anything. Coming out of this meeting, it's the mayor's office prerogative to do this. And this X item tonight was a request of the mayor's office, as it typically is, because they are the ones that lead. The mayor's office is what leads negotiations. Council has no role in that until it comes to a point of approval or rejection. So the way the process goes is to have this closed committee of the whole meeting, and then presumably out of that meeting, obviously it depends on how the discussion goes, but at some point, the mayor would have to bring to council a contract for us to approve. That will be in a public meeting, and there will be ample opportunity for any resident that wants to speak to that topic to do so. So I just want to make that abundantly clear to everybody what we're doing here. This is normal procedure, and there will be plenty of opportunity for public comment when that time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Councilwoman Toy.
One thing that I don't see in this sentence is that I normally see through all my years on council is what group are we affecting on this that we're putting in committee of the whole? Is this DPW? Is this the police? Is this the fire? What negotiating group are we negotiating and discussing? As cleared with this council.
Councilmember Toy, it is the discretion of the mayor's office to include or not include that information.
Is there someone here from the mayor's office tonight that can explain that? Or on the phone or wherever? I mean, it's a vote on something you don't know what you're doing. I appreciate Councilman Barr's things, but for as long as I've been on this city council, which has been a few times, normally there's in the body of the conversation, we know what we're going in for negotiation. And it behooves us to know that as elected bodies of this city. I don't want to get overly picky here, but you kind of got to know what you're going in for before you start moving stuff and approving things. I mean, you know, that's why I'm wondering, what group are we talking about? It hasn't been explained to me as one council member. Perhaps others know. I don't exactly know. I've heard rumors here and there, but honestly, I don't know. And I would like to know. And I would say table this until we can get somebody in here that will tell us then. Why are we voting on something we don't know? So I'm going to ask for a substitute for a tabling of this until we know who we're negotiating with. And if I don't have support, I don't have support.
We have support for a tabling motion. All right, Councilmember Jolly, are you going to offer support?
No, Madam President, I would just want to make a comment.
Okay, but wait, let's finish this, okay? Let me go back to council. If no one's going to offer support for the substitute motion, then it fails for lack of.
It does, correct. Yep.
Okay. All right, so we're back to an approving resolution. Councilmember Jolly.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I understand the sentiment offered by my colleague, Ms. Toy. I think we can read what's on the paper. I think we all know what this is about. So at this point, I think it best serves us to go ahead and have this meeting. I understand there is resident attention given this, given the current circumstances of what's going on. You know, the one thing I'd like to stress is we review the contract on behalf of the residents. The reason that we have a closed meeting is so as to not put the residents at a disadvantage in the negotiations. Much like in this circumstance, the collective bargaining union, the employees of the city that will be discussing the terms of the contract on their side, what is beneficial to them, what is not a benefit to them, what they may be giving up in the contract negotiations. Us having this closed meeting allows us to do the same, to know and to explore what benefits come to the city, to the residents, by what is being discussed in terms of these contractual terms and negotiations have led to. You know, Mr. Barr recently said it a couple minutes ago, and I wrote it a bunch of times in emails. There will be ample time for opportunity of residents to comment on this. When they comment on this, they, like us, will know the terms of what they are commenting on. I can honestly say, sitting here tonight, I have no factual knowledge of what we are going to discuss in terms of what was negotiated. I've heard rumors as well, like everybody else, but nothing has been relayed in terms of concrete facts, what is actually on the table. And I'm anxious to do so because I think it pushes the ball ahead. It allows us to make more informed decisions and ultimately to better serve the residents. That's where I'm at here. I will be supporting this so we can get that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Jolly. Council Member Toy.
Thank you. I in no way want to inhibit any of it. I was just asking for clarification of what group we were going with. I've heard rumors too, but I've also heard them on several negotiating groups. And I wanted to make sure who we were negotiating with. That's all I was trying to do, Madam Chair, is get clarification to that, because the body of the X item did not include that in it. And again, with my experience on the city council, it always had in the past. And I wondered why we're not being somewhat transparent on it. That's all. I don't want to hold up any group in the city. And I don't want to stick my colleagues on the spot, but in all fairness, we usually do know who we're negotiating with and why we're negotiating in that regard, Madam Chair. And I think it behooves us when we vote on that. I have no intention of holding this up. I only tabled it so we could get some answers because we have no one here tonight from the mayor's office. That's all. It's not to rip on anyone or the mayor or anyone else. It's just the fact that I wanted to know where we're negotiating. That's all. I think it's a very straightforward question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. This time I'm going to go to the audience. I see we have one member who would like to comment on this. And if I may remind Mr. Hillers that you have 2 minutes. And good evening.
Good evening. I just wanted to say that as I understand that Scott Barron was saying that this is normally routine, we are no longer living in routine times. The whole national discourse of policing has shifted, and Livonia isn't exempt from that. You have, I don't know if it's a majority, but you have many members of your constituents who don't want this to be done in private. And as Mr. Jolly was saying, I'm sorry, I don't remember what my point was on that, but more I wanted to say that I get this is how you normally do it, but these are not normal times. And when you're negotiating a department that takes up half the city's budget, or I think it's 40% of the city's budget, I think there should be more transparency in what you're doing with our money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hillers. With that, I'll go back to council. Vice President Barr.
I'll just repeat, there will be ample opportunity for comment on this. I think Councilwoman Toy is right as far as what's normally done. But the bottom line is the mayor is asking for a closed committee to review a negotiation. I think it makes total sense to go into that and to find out what it is and whatever it is. And I think we all have high suspicion as what it is, but I'm not going to speak for the mayor. I'm only going to go on what we've been given. As I stated earlier, there will be ample opportunity for public comment. This could not be more transparent. There's nothing being hidden here. So just want to put that to rest again. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Barr. So with that, looks like we have one more member from the audience. Mr. Hillers, you've already spoken. We allow audience communication. Anyone who wishes to speak has one opportunity during audience communication to speak on the agenda item. Seeing that we have no one else from the audience and seeing that we have no one else from council, Madam Clerk, would you please go ahead and take the vote on the closed committee for the purposes of discussing negotiations of collective bargaining agreements?
Vice President Barr.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic.
Aye.
Councilmember Jolly.
Aye.
Councilmember Toy.
Councilmember Toy, you're on mute.
Sorry, aye.
President McIntyre.
Aye. And the request is approved unanimously, and we will schedule a closed committee of the whole for the purposes of discussing collective bargaining agreements. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn and go back to audience communications, during the meeting, we received some sad news that Councilmember Toy was going to share with us and with those who are listening.
Thank you, Madam President. It's, forgive me, I'm a little taken back and emotional about this one. Judy Nagy passed away this morning at the Angela Hospice. We learned during the meeting, our president let me know. Judy was a close friend of mine on many fronts. As we all know, she was very active in Hearts of Livonia with Ron Medeiros and so many others, and Ed McNamara back in the day before Donovic was born in Mercola, but that's all right. We still love them. But she was our city assessor for years and years, and everybody loved Judy. I don't know too many people that didn't, except probably the people she raised their taxes on. No. But in all honesty, when I interned with Ed McNamara back 100 years ago, I worked out of Judy's office, so I got to know Judy Nagy very well. And then we got to know each other as I grew older and grew up, because I was only like 18 at that point. And when I became city treasurer, we worked very closely with the assessor's office and the great job they did. And Judy, how much she just loved Livonia. I mean, she's like the godmother of Livonia, honestly. If there ever was a woman that would have been labeled that, it was Judy Nagy. And she continues that legacy today with her daughters and her son, who live over off of Merriman there, her son does. And her one daughter that continues to play golf and is a great golfer. And Lee, who owns French's Flowers over here on 5 in Farmington, does a super job. So Judy's going to be so missed. And she passed away at Angela Hospice. I'm not sure of what, but I think Jack Engelbretson called our president, and she was gracious enough, because she knew Judy and I were friends, to let me know that during the meeting. So, you know, we're all going to lose people that we know in our community. But I'll tell you, Judy was definitely Miss Livonia, the godmother of, and she's going to be sorely missed. Thank you, Madam President, and others for letting me indulge on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Toy, and thank you to our former mayor, Jack Engelbretson, for sharing that news with us.
Yep.
At this time, I go back to the audience communication. If anyone would like to talk to council, address council on any items that are not in this evening's agenda, now is an opportunity to do so. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Yeah.
Did you catch who that was?
No.
Rob.
Vic and Donovic and
Laura.
Supporting.
Toy?
Yes.
All right. Got it. Okay. And I think we can safely show 7 on that. It's 9:03. I'm going to ask that we come together. We're adjourned at 9:33. I'm going to ask that we come back at in 7 minutes, if we can, at 9:40 for the study meeting. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at 8. And I'll remind everyone that the meeting will stay in session. The Zoom will stay on and in session until we reconvene at 9:40. Thank you.